Bob Marley became much more than a musician. His songs carried messages of resistance, unity, and the fight against oppression, making him an influential figure not only in Jamaica but across the world. During the 1970s, a period marked by intense political conflicts on the island, his voice echoed as a call for peace amidst a divided society. But not everyone saw this in a positive light. Declassified documents and historical accounts suggest that foreign intelligence agencies closely monitored the singer's movements, fearing that his influence would extend beyond music and turn him into a true agent of political transformation. In 1981, Bob Marley officially passed away due to a rare and aggressive cancer, but over the years, doubts began to emerge. Was there something more behind his death? Why was he being monitored even before falling ill? And most importantly, could it be possible that he was silenced? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube recommend the videos to more people and allowing me to continue bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. Few people in the world have managed to turn music into power the way Bob Marley did. It wasn't just reggae. It wasn't just melodies. They were messages. He spoke of freedom, of resistance, of a people who wanted to take control of their own history. But words have power, and when a man can make millions listen to his words, he becomes a threat to those who do not want change. Jamaica in the 1970s was a battlefield, but not just any battlefield. The gunfire didn't come only from gangs and armed groups. Much bigger interests were at play. The country was divided between two parties, the PNP, which leaned towards socialism and had close ties with Cuba, and the JLP, which was more aligned with the United States. But this division wasn't settled merely with votes. It was settled with blood. Controlling the island meant much more than winning an election. It meant power. It meant influence. And most of all, it meant money. Bob Marley never wanted to be a politician. He never wanted to choose sides. He only wanted people to unite. But the problem is that when there is war, those who preach peace are seen as obstacles. And obstacles are eliminated. In 1976, tensions in Jamaica were unbearable. The country was on the verge of collapse. The number of political assassinations increased daily. The population lived in terror. And Marley did what he did best. He organized a concert. The Smile Jamaica concert. A free event to try to bring a bit of unity amidst the chaos. But could a simple concert really calm a nation at war? Or could it be seen as a threat by those who profited from the chaos? That's when the whispers began. Some said Marley was favoring one side. Others believed he was challenging forces much greater than he realized. But what no one knew at the time was that he was already being watched. The United States was worried, very worried. The CIA closely monitored everything happening in Jamaica. Their fear was clear. What if the country followed Cuba's path? What if a simple song was enough to make people question foreign control over the island? To many, Marley was just a singer. But to American intelligence, he could be the catalyst for something bigger. 2 days before the concert, on December 3rd, 1976, the threat became real. Armed men invaded Bob Marley's home. He was with his wife, Rita, and some friends. Without warning, gunfire erupted. The singer was shot in the arm and chest. Rita was shot in the head. Others were wounded. But, unbelievably, no one died. Now think with me, an attack of this scale, at such a strategic moment, was it just a coincidence? Just a common crime? Or was there something more behind it? The perpetrators were never found. No investigation advanced. The case was simply brushed aside. Marley's response was something no one expected. Even injured, he took the stage. He sang for more than 80,000 people. The bullet in his arm didn't stop him. Fear didn't make him back down. And at that moment, it became clear that he wasn't just a musician. He was a symbol. But symbols are dangerous. And now he was an even bigger target. The attack was just the beginning. After that, he left Jamaica. He went into exile in England. But far from the island, the shadows around him did not disappear. On the contrary, what happened that night may have been a warning. A warning that he was interfering with the wrong mechanisms. The question remains, who really wanted Bob Marley out of the way? That night of December 3rd, 1976, became etched in Jamaica's history. A brutal attack, Gunshots fired without warning, a world-famous singer wounded inside his own home. But the scariest part wasn't what happened. It was what came after. Bob Marley survived. His wife Rita did too. The other wounded individuals recovered. But what about the culprits? Who were those men? Who sent them? Who paid for that attack? The strangest thing is that, officially, no one had answers. No significant arrests. No serious investigation. Just silence. Now think about this. If it were just a common crime, a gang attack, why was no one held accountable? Jamaica was consumed by political violence, and crimes like these weren't uncommon. But this wasn't just any target. It was Bob Marley. Behind the scenes, rumors began to spread. Was this attack an attempt to silence him? A warning for him to stop? Or, even worse, a plan that failed? What we do know is that Marley didn't back down. Even after being shot, 2 days later, he took the stage at the Smile Jamaica concert and sang for more than 80,000 people. A move that directly defied anyone who wanted him out of the way. But was that seen as a mistake? Did those who planned the attack realize he was stronger than they had imagined? Then something changed. Marley left Jamaica. Just weeks after the attack, he traveled to England, where he would spend the next few years. Some say he fled. Others say he was forced out. But the truth is, even far from home, he wasn't safe. Because now, we enter a part of the story that many consider one of the darkest pieces of this puzzle. In London, Marley continued his career, recorded new albums, and solidified his position as a global icon. But it was there, in exile, that a strange encounter took place. The man who entered Bob Marley's life seemed like just another journalist. But some say he was much more than that. His name? Carl Colby, a reporter who, interestingly, was the son of William Colby, former director of the CIA. What did this man want? What was the real reason for his approach? Some theories suggest he tried to earn Marley's trust. Others claim this meeting could have been a crucial moment leading up to what happened next. But there's something even stranger. Shortly after, Bob Marley received a gift from another man. A pair of boots. A simple gift, seemingly harmless. But according to some versions of the story, when Marley tried them on, he felt something piercing his toe. A small sting. Almost imperceptible, but just enough. It was after this incident that the cancer began to manifest. A rare, aggressive cancer. And it emerged precisely in the same toe where he had felt that sting. Coincidence? Some people believe it was, but others say it wasn't. Among them was a man named Bill Oxley, a former CIA agent who, before his death, claimed to have participated in an operation to neutralize Bob Marley. According to him, Marley couldn't be assassinated in an obvious way. He couldn't simply be shot in broad daylight. His death had to appear natural. Cancer was the perfect solution. Of course, this confession was never officially proven. There are no public documents to support this version. But there's one thing that can't be ignored: the silence. Because the truth is, Marley never received justice for what happened that night in 1976. The attack against him was forgotten, buried, left behind as if it had never happened. But the question remains, was it merely a random act of violence, or the first step in something much bigger? Marley thought the worst was over. But the deadliest blow didn't come from a gun. It came from something he put on himself. The 1976 assassination attempt had failed, and those who wanted him silenced knew they needed a different method. A bullet could turn him into a martyr. But what if his death seemed natural? It was around this time that Marley began interacting with people who, to this day, remain subjects of suspicion. Among them, one man stood out. His name was Carl Colby, a supposed journalist who suddenly appeared, showing great interest in his life and work. Nothing too strange at first. But there was one detail that few knew. Carl was the son of William Colby, former director of the CIA. What was a man with that connection doing so close to Bob Marley? Was it just a coincidence or part of something much bigger? Shortly after this encounter, Marley received a gift from another man. A pair of boots. Something simple, seemingly harmless. But what happened next raised suspicions that have never been fully clarified. When he put on the boots, Marley felt a sharp sting on his toe. Something pricked him. It was a strange sensation, quick, like being poked by a thin needle. He found it odd, but didn't give it much thought. After all, why worry about a minor discomfort in his foot? Time passed, and soon Marley began to feel pain in that very spot. His toe started showing signs that something was wrong. Shortly after, the diagnosis came: aggressive melanoma, a rare type of cancer that, unusually, appeared exactly where he had felt that sting. Coincidence? Or was Bob Marley's fate sealed the moment he put on those boots? Theories gained momentum when a man named Bill Oxley, supposedly a former CIA agent, claimed before his death that he had been part of an operation to eliminate Marley. According to him, the singer couldn't simply be killed. That would cause worldwide outrage. The solution? A silent plan. Something that would appear natural. Something no one would question. The CIA never confirmed this version. There are no official documents proving Oxley's story. But there are questions that have never been answered. Why did Bob Marley refuse to amputate his infected toe, even knowing it could save his life? Did he fear that something bigger was at play? Why, despite having access to the best treatment available at the time, did the cancer spread so quickly? And why were the perpetrators of the 1976 attack never found? Was it all part of a much larger plan? Bob Marley wasn't a politician, but his voice moved millions. He spoke about freedom, resistance, independence. And in the 1970s, at the height of the Cold War, that was dangerous. The question remains, was his death merely a cruel fate, or the result of a carefully orchestrated plan? Many people believe that Bob Marley was just a musician, an artist who wanted to spread peace and love through reggae. But for some governments and intelligence agencies, he was a risk factor, a name that appeared in national security reports. And this isn't just a theory. Declassified documents years later indicate that the CIA was closely monitoring Jamaica in the 1970s. The island, seen as a potential point of socialist influence, was on the radar of the United States. And Marley, despite not being directly involved in politics, became a piece in this game. The question is, why would a singer be so dangerous to such a powerful government? The answer lies in his influence. Bob Marley was not a political leader, but he had something that politicians dream of. He could mobilize millions of people without holding office or being part of a party. His songs spoke of resistance, independence, and liberation from oppression. And in a world polarized between capitalism and communism, that could be seen as a threat. Declassified documents show that the United States was deeply concerned about the government of Michael Manley, leader of the PNP and then Prime Minister of Jamaica. Manley maintained close ties with Cuba and even met personally with Fidel Castro, something that triggered red alerts in Washington. The fear was that Jamaica would follow the same path as Cuba and become another ally of the communist bloc. And Bob Marley, unintentionally, was a key piece in this equation. His support for social justice causes and his proximity to Manley led to his name being associated with potential political influence. A secret CIA report, declassified years later, described Jamaica as an unstable territory and highlighted the need for strategic actions to prevent the island from aligning with the socialist bloc. What exactly were these strategic actions? At the time, the CIA was already known for financing and arming paramilitary groups in various countries to influence their political outcomes. In Jamaica, the situation was no different. The country was consumed by violence between political factions, and there is evidence that certain groups received foreign support to destabilize the government. Now the question remains, was Marley simply on the CIA's radar as a monitored civilian, or was his name on a list of priority targets? The 1976 attack, still with no identified culprits, could have been part of an initial attempt to neutralize him. When that failed, new approaches emerged. And this is where the story of the deadly gift comes into play. After the attack, Marley went to England. But that didn't mean he was out of reach of American intelligence. Quite the opposite. The surveillance continued. Witnesses claim that even outside Jamaica, Marley was watched by undercover agents. Were these just conspiracy theories, or an undisclosed truth? The fact remains that the CIA had strong reasons to be concerned about Jamaica at that time. The country was at the center of a geopolitical struggle between the United States and communist influence in the Caribbean. And within this scenario, Bob Marley became much more than a singer. He was a voice that could not be ignored. The big question is, how far did this surveillance go? Did the CIA merely observe him, or was there something more? Bob Marley always believed that his connection with nature and his spirituality would be enough to guide him through life. But when the pain became unbearable, he had no choice. He needed help. In 1980, as his health deteriorated, Marley made a decision that, to this day raises doubts and suspicions. He accepted treatment from a German doctor named Joseph Issels. At first, it seemed like a promising choice. Issels claimed to be a specialist in alternative cancer treatments. But there was a problem. His methods were highly controversial. He rejected conventional treatments and claimed to cure his patients through a unique immunological approach. Now think about this. Why did Marley, a man with vast resources, end up in the hands of a doctor whose reputation was, at best, questionable? What makes everything even stranger is that, instead of improving, his condition rapidly worsened. The man who once filled stadiums was now too weak to walk. And for those who believe his death was orchestrated, this raises an inevitable question. Was Marley a victim of medical negligence or something much darker? Joseph Issels had already been accused of dubious practices before. His treatments were based on the idea that cancer could be reversed by strengthening the immune system, but many of his patients did not survive under his care. Still, he continued to practice without major repercussions. Was this just medical incompetence? Or was Marley steered towards someone who would ensure he never recovered? What's even more intriguing is that shortly before going to Issels' clinic, Bob Marley attempted to seek other treatments. But for unknown reasons, his options were limited. Was someone restricting his choices? What we do know is that after just a few months under Issels' care, Marley no longer had the strength to continue. He was too weak to sing, to play, to be what he had always been, an unstoppable force. In May 1981, his body finally gave in. But was his death merely the inevitable result of his illness? Or did the treatment he received accelerate the process? What really happened in those last months of his life? Did Bob Marley die because his condition was truly incurable, or because someone ensured he never had a real chance to fight? Bob Marley's death was swift. Too swift. In less than a year, he went from a man full of energy to someone unrecognizable, weakened, consumed by an illness that appeared in a strangely specific way. But if his death was natural, why do some of his last words suggest that he already knew he wouldn't make it out of this story alive? In 1980, just months before his death, Marley was on tour. Despite his illness, he still tried to stay strong. But those who were with him at the time say his behavior changed. He became more reserved, quieter, as if something was weighing on him. It was during this time that he uttered one of his most cryptic phrases, "My time is short." Think about it. Bob Marley was a deeply spiritual man, but he had never openly spoken about feeling like his end was near. So why did he start saying this so often? Did he truly feel that cancer was winning, or did he know something else was happening? In one of his last interviews, Marley was asked about his legacy. Instead of talking about music or the future, he simply said, "What is hidden must be revealed." What did he mean by that? Some close to him claim that he already suspected he was being manipulated. He knew he was sick, but he also knew something didn't add up. The treatment didn't seem to be helping. His body was weakening rapidly, and rather than fighting back, it was as if he had already accepted his fate. Another strange phrase was spoken to a friend just days before his death. "The game has already been played." What did he mean? Was he saying that his death had already been decided? That there was nothing he could do? Or was it just a metaphor for his battle with illness? Most intriguingly, in his final days, Marley avoided talking about his condition with strangers. It was as if he didn't want certain information reaching the wrong ears. His son, Ziggy Marley, years later, commented on his father's death in an enigmatic way. He said that his father knew things, and that his death was far more complex than people imagine. But to this day, he has never gone into details. What else does the family know? What has never been revealed? What is certain is that in his final year, Marley began saying his goodbyes in a strange way, not as someone who was simply sick, but as someone who knew he was being led toward an inevitable fate. His last concert took place in September 1980 in Pittsburgh. It was the last time his voice echoed on stage. And curiously, the final song he sang was Redemption Song, a song about liberation and resistance. Was that just a coincidence, or did he already know this was his farewell? And then just weeks later, Bob Marley died. But his final words still haunt this story. His last moments were marked by cryptic phrases. But was he merely expressing his resignation to the illness, or was he trying to tell us that everything had been orchestrated from the very beginning? Bob Marley never had the chance to grow old. He died at just 36 years old. Too young, too fast. For many, It was simply the tragic fate of a man who battled an aggressive disease. But for others, it was a carefully executed plan, from the first warning to the final blow. The 1976 assassination attempt failed. The bullet couldn't silence him. But soon after came the poisoned gift, the mysterious illness, and the treatment that didn't heal but only weakened him. Every piece of this story seems to fit perfectly into a conspiracy narrative. But are we just connecting coincidences? If all of this was merely a matter of chance, why do so many questions remain unanswered? Why were the perpetrators of the attack on his home never found? Why was he monitored by the CIA despite not being a political leader? Why did his cancer progress so rapidly and lethally? And if his death was not natural, who had an interest in eliminating him? The Jamaican government? Rival political groups? Or far greater forces that saw his influence as a global threat? What we do know is that after his death, Jamaica underwent significant changes. The country remained under strong Western influence, and over time, political tensions subsided. But what if Marley had survived? What could he have done? What could he have changed? Time has passed, but Bob Marley has not been forgotten. His music is still alive, his messages still resonate. But the doubt remains. Did he die because his body couldn't resist? Or because someone decided he couldn't continue? Bob Marley has been gone for more than 4 decades, yet the questions surrounding his death remain unanswered. Was it just cruel fate or a meticulously executed plan? The attack, the sudden illness, the questionable treatment, every piece of this story points to something bigger, something that may never be fully revealed. If it was an accident or a conspiracy, we may never know for sure. But one thing is undeniable: Bob Marley was more than just a singer. He was a movement, a powerful voice that crossed borders and challenged systems. If his message was so dangerous that it had to be silenced, then perhaps the greatest proof of his strength is the very mystery that still surrounds him. This story is just one piece, and one day, perhaps you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share, because more voices mean more discoveries.